Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Renee Fitzner. It's time to make another drawing. Today my Kickstarter launched. I'm so excited, and today I'm going to be drawing a goblin overseer harassing one of his employees, which is pretty much what you'd expect a goblin overseer to do. So let's get into it.
So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be just sketching out a really small thumbnail version of this drawing. Just keeping really loose and not worrying about too much detail. It's pretty hard to get in too much detail anyway because it's such a tiny drawing, and just you can see I'm blocking in all of those major parts of the cartoon. Just got the rib cage, the curve of the spine there showing the direction. You got the direction of the legs and the placement of the feet, and I'm really showing all that energy just being pushed into the goblin's arms, all that energy directed towards his fists as he's grabbing his employee, the hapless Ulrick, who's kind of flopped out on the ground there. He's got a silly expression on his face, so this scene isn't meant to be too hectic or anything. It's meant to be a bit of fun, a bit silly, and you can see I'm not putting in too many details, but I am interested to see where the clothes are and where various parts of the clothing would fit. So now I'm swapping over to the main drawing, zooming out a bit, and this is where I'm really just I've sped up the film a little bit, so this is twice the normal speed, and now I'm working from my thumbnail sketch, and I'm using that as the basis for my actual drawing. So I want to recapture that energy that I put into that tiny drawing, and but as I'm working in, I'm getting more of the details. So of course I'm putting more attention into the model. I'm thinking more about the proportions of each character, and especially since one's bent over and the other one's bent over backwards, I'm thinking about, well, how tall would they be relative to each other if they suddenly stood up? Actually, this is something I should have thought a bit more about, because looking at it now, Ulrich is supposed to be shorter than Kevin. So this is it's kind of a weird situation. The goblin is taller than the human in this comic, from my comic Mythic Creature Trainer. But Kevin the goblin is the tall one, and Ulrich is the short one. And if you look at the finished drawing and imagine if they stood up, then they'd be almost about the same size. I guess you could say that Ulrich is in the foreground a little bit, so he'd be a little bit bigger. But really, if I did this again, I would have to make Ulrich's legs shorter than they are. So I'm bringing in more of the details, and I'm just going to as you saw earlier, I worked over it a little bit with a Kneadable eraser, and that's a great way to just push back some of the drawing and better work over it again to get just a little bit tighter with the details before you go to the inking phase. Because you don't want to keep pushing harder and harder with the pencil. That wrecks the tooth of the paper, it wrecks the integrity of the paper. You want to keep fairly light with the pencils, and so if you want to build in some more details, it's better just to rub over it with a Kneadable eraser. I use a Faber Castell. You can get it from art shops or online. And now I'm getting to work with my Pentel Brush Pen. I love this pen. Years ago I used to work with brushes and ink, so I would literally dip the pen in the ink, and it was a huge mess. It would get on my hand, it would get on the paper. But this is just fantastic. I love it. It's kept its shape, so it's got a nice pointy end, and I can thoroughly recommend this. Again, you can get it online, and you can get refillable cartridges of new ink, so it always stays nice and black. And yes, I'm taking full advantage of that. I'm making sure some parts of my drawing have thin line and others have thick. So especially as I'm taking that brush and dragging it across the page, I'm making sure that the ends of it kind of have a pointy thin feel, and the other parts are thicker. Especially if there's shadows, like underneath Ulrick's cowl, I've put a little bit of a darker shadow there, or at the end of his dreadlocks, you can see I've made the line a little bit thicker to show that there's a little bit of weight to that and a little bit more substance. And I'm putting more attention into the hands this pass. So earlier I wanted just to keep the direction of the hands the main thing, and the clump of it I drew kind of puppet mitten fingers, but now I'm taking care to articulate each finger and to put in those details, so it's a more convincing representation of a hand. And sorry, this is off screen now, but drawing in the feet, I like to put in a lot of the details of the folding of the clothing. That's just a habit I've got into. I like to keep some areas of the drawing detailed with little details like folds of the clothing, and other parts I like to keep nice and open. So that's just another part of your drawing that you want to consider, is having that variety. Some parts you want open and clean, other parts you want to put in a bit of detail just to keep that variety going. Now I'm working in Kevin's cowl. He's got his own kind of dress sense, I suppose. He's got a stone with a jewel in it as a kind of a brooch on the front of his cowl. He likes to dress a little bit fancier than his employees or his the people he's supervising. And he's got bigger boot cuffs as well. He likes those big boots. And when I go in to do the colours a little bit later, you'll see that his belt buckle is a bit shinier than Ulrich's as well. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. I actually recorded this whole thing earlier, but found out my phone wasn't recording, so that was pretty frustrating, and now my voice is a bit shot. Yeah, I'm not sure why they're wearing those sort of things around their shoulders. I guess they feel the cold, these guys. They spend a lot of time outside as creature trainers. And that it makes sense for Ulrich's character, because in this story he is a like a hunter class. If you're playing a RPG or Dungeons and Dragons, you would class him as a hunter. When he gets out on the quest a little bit later in the story, he's got a bow and arrow, so he's an archer, and he also does a bit of animal trapping as well. So that's those are classic hunter traits, I suppose: affinity with animals and the ability to hunt and trap. As I get into the colours here, you can see that I'm using my Touchnew markers. Again, I bought these online. They were pretty cheap. I got a lot of markers, I think about 180. Some of them didn't work, some of them dried out, but a lot of them did. So it was well worth the spend, and they've just got some fantastic colours. And had some of them on my wall for a while now, and the colours haven't faded, which is fantastic. So pretty good markers. for what you paid, much cheaper than Copics. I'm just looking at the, oh yeah, you can see that they've got two different nibs on either end. They've got the pointy nib and the thicker nib. And I've sped this up to 4 times the speed because I thought, yeah, I don't have as much to say about the colouring of these characters, except to say that I'm still trying to work wet in wet. Trying not to let the marker dry too much before I've finished an area of colour. But if I do, it's not a disaster. As you can see, it's got a little bit patchy in the cowl there, but as I talked about in the last video, that's something that's actually desirable once in a while. You need a little bit of visual interest in your rendering technique, and if there's just a little bit of unevenness or a little bit of happy accidents, then that's a good thing, because it just shows the humanity inside the drawing, and it shows it wasn't done by a computer, which hopefully is obvious even if you haven't seen this process video. So just thinking a little bit about the colours, the colour scheme of these characters, just as we wrap up. With Ulrick, you can see there's a balance there of cools and warms in his colour scheme. He's got the cool in the blue of his hair and the green of his shirt. It's quite intense green, matched by an intense sort of pinky magenta of his pants. But of course going into warm there, and the more neutral warms of his belt and boots and his cowl. And with Kevin the Goblin, his cool green skin is offset by the warmth of his clothes, and so that particularly strong red of his cowl and the more neutral warms of his buckle and pants and boots. And we're just going to bring this drawing home now. I'm pretty happy with how I've drawn these characters, the way these have come out. As you can see, my style here is a little bit of Adventure Time, Pendleton Ward, kind of a Cartoon Network type style, mixed with a bit of Disney and probably a bit of Chuck Jones there as well, especially the way those eyes are popping out of their head. That reminds me a bit of Chuck Jones. And there you have it.
So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you got something out of that. Please ask me any questions in the comments below. Please like and subscribe. And don't forget to go and check out my Kickstarter opening today. It's going to be fantastic. I'm making a new comic for the characters that I just drew, and it's called Mythic Creature Trainer. And it's a follow-up basically to my previous comics, Sneaky Goblins, and also Sneaky Goblins at College. So I'm really proud of these books, and I can't wait to make Mythic Creature Trainer into its own comic book. So check it out. Thanks for watching.